I'd like to call the planning board meeting of February the 14th, 2022 to order at 7:02 p.m. First item on our agenda this evening is the approval of minutes, starting with January the 10th of 2022. Does anybody have any amendments they would like to make to the minutes that were distributed? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as official for January the 10th.
I move that we approve the January 10th minutes.
Mike Baker,
Second.
Monica, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, actually, Monica, were you there? I'm not sure you were.
Oh, was that the one I missed?
I
Yeah.
believe, yes, it was.
Sorry, I was just going through the motion.
So Mike has done the motioned. Can I have another second instead?
I'll second.
Tony? All those in favor? Aye. And one abstention by Monica. So then the second set of minutes was for January the 25th, 2022. Any changes there? Everyone was in attendance for that meeting.
I'll move those minutes.
Monica,
Second.
second? Mike, was that a second? Mike
Yep.
Baker? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next item on the agenda, public comment period. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that would like to bring a item to the planning board that is not on the agenda this evening? If so, if you would just raise your hand or speak up. I don't hear or see anyone wishing to speak, so I would entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
I will
move
move to public
Jim,
comment period.
Second.
Jim to Mike Baker, those in favor? Aye. And it passes. Okay,
Aye.
so continue the public hearing for the final plat of cluster subdivision proposal 2021, 4464 by Beer Properties LLC. And Beer Properties and Hunt Engineers are providing the final plat of a cluster subdivision for property parcel 45.2-1-47.2, which consists of approximately 40 acres of vacant land located between Craft Road and Bush Lane. Final plat, along with details of proposed duplex lots, will be reviewed by the planning board. So I understand that there have been some productive meetings held. Mike Scott, you want to let us know what's going on?
Yeah, we had David and Chris and John and Brent Cross and I, we met. I think Dondi was there also. Reviewed some of we started to review some of the sewer, where that's going to be run. Talked about a few setbacks. We talked with David about possibly getting as much of the wetlands within the HOA and not in a separate parcel that could possibly be sold to someone else. And like I said, it was a rather productive meeting. It was like the first step. I think tonight David may be showing you what they've come up with, what he and Chris have come up with, so you can discuss that. And I think we need to basically settle on what the site is going to look like. And if we all agree on that, I would recommend that we start the finite process of where the sewer is located, where the water is located, sidewalks, trails, everything else, so that David can finalize this and get moving on this thing. So that's what my recommendation would be.
Okay, so I think everyone got a copy of, I don't know, is this what was discussed? David Beer, why don't you fill us in on this, the one that we got, the is this one.
You want me to pull it up, David?
Sure. Mike, Chris Wood was trying to sign in. Is he? And
He's not on yet.
he asked me for the login stuff and I forwarded it to him. Do you have to invite him in or something like that? Or-
He just popped up.
Oh, okay, good.
So if you want, yeah, why don't I let him go ahead and bring the stuff up and you guys can do what you have to do.
Sure.
I'll share the screen here.
So this plan is the result of the discussion that you all had. Is that correct?
Well, this plan that you saw, Chris generated after the last planning board meeting. And it was taking into account some of the comments that you all had made. And kind of the major one that you'll notice is that we adopted Mike Baker's suggestion to turn the end of the loop, the kind of the inside portion of the loop, into green space park area, and relocated the lot that was there to the north side of the loop. Yeah, I kind of lost track of the numbering, but it's essentially like the labeled lot 11 had been the lot that was inside the loop at the end of the loop. And Chris was able to, make that all fit. And then, so that's the major change in terms of the layout. The meeting that we had with the village staff talked about primarily the lot lines and where they fall relative to the wetlands. And that was one of Brent's
Concerns.
big concerns. And the solution that we came up with was that the actual deeded lot lines would fall outside of the wetlands, but so that the buildable area of those lots, which you can see with the dashed lines, where we're up against the wetlands on lot, like for instance, 15, 16, 17, and the major ones, and then the other major ones were 28 and 29. Those lot lines are drawn outside of the wetlands, but in order for the buildable area to be of reasonable size to put up a structure, we're asking for relief from the kind of standard medium density setback requirements. Aesthetically, or as you look at these structures on these lots, you're not going to see anything any different than in any other situation or any other lots, but just the deeded boundary would be outside of the wetlands. There would still be plenty of space behind the structures, but the wetlands area would convey to the homeowners association. And if there ever were different property owners, the lot lines fall outside of the wetlands area. And that was something that I'm not sure who suggested it, but whether it was me or maybe Brent came up with it, either which way, Brent seemed to think it was a reasonable idea, and so do I. I mean, it allows us to build on reasonable lots with reasonable buildable areas, and it gives Brent, what he was looking for, in that the wetlands would not be divided up onto many lots, requiring maybe the village having to deal with many property owners if there were ever problems. as opposed to dealing with a single entity, the HOA.
And just to add in there, Brent couldn't be here this evening, but he did want me to convey to you that he, like David said, he's completely in favor of this.
I remember from one situation in the past, and I just want to bring this up. First of all, I think it's a good solution, and we've already, in other instances here, there's other lot sizes that are smaller than those. So I don't think that's an issue with a cluster subdivision. But I seem to recall in some other situation, like on, I think it was Sun Path or something, where if it's a smaller lot size, the building size has to be, is somehow changed. The square footage has to be less, or the footprint has to fit the lot size. Is that going to matter?
Are you talking about percentage of lot coverage?
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, I think so.
That can be, that is like with this PDA, you can have relief from that as long as you approve it.
In a cluster subdivision?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and on the final plat, and I'll send this stuff over to Chris and David. What the requirements are on the final plat for this. Each lot will have to show its designated, or basically its designated setbacks, your front, back, or whatever. Some of them
Right.
might actually be down to 0 or minimal. But that's just the nature of the beast. And if that's approved by the planning board, then that's what that lot is going to carry with it from then on.
Right, and Mike, this new plan here, this is Chris Wood, does show the property lines with the setbacks. That dashed line is what we call the buildable area, but that's also the setback line
Okay.
for that. So if you look at like lot 28, we're asking for a relief from the rear setback, which is 40 feet. We're
Oh.
asking for that to be reduced. And the same thing on lot 15, 16.
Or 17, yeah.
On 17 also.
Yeah, I think over at that whole north.
Yeah, 15 and 16 both are affected by a wetland. 28, 29 are affected by the stream, the intermittent stream that comes across the site. And then the other ones that we have relief on right now are 26 and 27 for the stormwater easement. Brent had requested that full easement be outside the property line. So those 26 and 27 would be a 0 side yard setback on the outsides of the lot.
And that just makes everything cleaner.
Well, I was going to say, I think to Brent's point, this really is, it does make it cleaner, and for, we know where we're at today, but who knows what the future will bring. So it really does make sense to make it as clean as possible and as clear as possible for everybody. So it does seem like we're making some good progress. So David Beer, are you fairly pleased with this particular setup?
This is a layout that we can live with.
Okay. So board members, any questions? Starting with you, Mike Baker?
No, I'm in favor of it. I think just in general, I'm glad that, the discussion with the beers in the village was productive, and just sort of, I do like that moving. I mean, I live with it either way. It's it's yours, but I think it looks good with that lot moved up there out of the loop and up to the north. So, and I think who was it? Was it John Courtney had also requested, hey, is there a way that you can tie the trail system into the existing trails there in Lansing Trails 1? And I see that on the map preliminary here, where there's that little piece, kind of halfway up Craft Road where it connects with the other trails that are in Lansing Trail 1 across the road there. So no, I think that's good. I don't have any questions. I think I'm in favor of giving them the relief that they ask for to make it easier to get everything you know, the setbacks adjusted and wetlands accounted for and everything like that to just help it be a little easier for the village to work with in the future.
Tony, any comments or questions?
Nothing more than what Mike just said very well.
James?
No, I have nothing to add to what's already been said.
Okay, Monica, I'll ask you, but
No, I'm on. It's just I think my kids are using all the bandwidth. So the video, because Simon's on as well, or he was. So yeah, no, I agree. I like this plan. I'm fine with all of those conditions or the concessions, I guess. And I think Mike said it well.
yeah, I too think that as long as we've resolved, I think what my main concerns were the intersections and how it interacted with the adjacent properties. I think I know there's going to be additional things that come up as we go along, but I think once we have this kind of basic thing, there's going to be, as you've said, David Beer, in the past, that there will be tweaks that are going to be needed, but it seems that the general concept is sound. And I'm just glad we have the village staff to work out all of these setbacks and easements and whatnot. But I think there's a lot of work to be done there, but it does seem like we're going, you know, in the right direction for us. And I'm glad that you feel the same way. Other than that, I don't know. Are we ready to just move along and have some more, as you said, Mike, Scott, to have some more specifics, all of the things pinned down a little bit more, the sewer easements, all of that, the sidewalks, the trails?
Yeah, I would, I'd recommend that, you know, Chris and David get together with John and Brent and Dottie and let's start working on the finite. I mean, you've got all the lots laid out where everyone's happy with them. At this point, let's get the sewer laid out. Let's get all the fine details done. So that we can present so that David and Chris can present a final plat. Bring it back to you folks, go over the short EAF, close a public hearing and get David moving along.
Sounds good to me.
Mike and Madam Chair, would it be possible to ask for a motion from the planning board to accept relief of the setbacks based on the plan presented here?
Is that necessary?
Just so we have a progress step in this, that yes, everybody on the planning board in agreement with relief of the setbacks.
Oh, before you go and put all this on paper?
Yeah, before we go and move forward and
Right.
correct all the other comments that were addressed, it'd just be nice to have a stepping stone here that we're all in agreement, moving in the right direction.
I think within reason. I don't know, Natalie, do you have any advice as to how we might?
No,
do
without specifically laying out all this specific relief you're going to be requesting, how much we can give you a binding resolution without a list of the caveats you're asking for. I mean, I think that what the
Okay.
board has said is pretty clear that they're kind of willing to go along with this setback waivers when necessary, but to give you a blanket waiver doesn't seem appropriate to me. And I don't know.
I
how-
understand, Natalie. It was just a question if we could get some sort of a motion to help approve and, you know, of that acceptance, I guess. Wasn't really looking for the specific reliefs or a blanket relief, just something in the minutes that shows that we're accepting of this and moving forward in the right direction.
I
Jim,
think,
you have a comment?
yeah, I do. I think the minutes of this board are pretty comprehensive and detailed. So given that there was discussion, and again, I would defer to Natalie in this, but it would seem that there was discussion on the planning board being okay with those changes.
Okay.
That'd be reflected in the minutes. So there's something in writing.
James, I'm good with that as long as you feel, you know, you guys feel they're comfortable and it's reflected in the minutes, we're good. We don't need a resolution then or a motion. That's fine.
No,
I'm okay with that.
Sure,
Our
but I
minutes
think
are recorded. No, I think too, I was going to say the same thing, Jim, is that, you know, we do try to show how we got from point A to point B. And I think this is an important thing, but we are all in agreement that this is acceptable. It's acceptable to us. It seems to be acceptable to everyone else in our village staff. So I think the minutes, we'll make a commitment to being sure that it's reflected thusly in the minutes, if that's good
Okay.
enough.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think we're fine with that. I just have a couple of questions that, since we're all here, I'd like to ask and hopefully have some discussion of. And that relates to the trail connections, the sidewalks, and then also the connection to the Lansing Trails development, via the Millcroft Way extension.
Okay.
And, just so that, again, that Chris doesn't draw out a bunch of things that, you guys are unsatisfied with. Our idea for sidewalks was that we would have a kind of proper paved sidewalk along the West Road, the, kind of main road that connects Craft to the Millcroft Way extension. And then you have a paved walk that goes up to the existing Millcroft Way. Right now, within the Millcroft subdivision, there's something of a stone dust trail there. But I mean, we would propose to make a hard surface sidewalk between there and Craft Road.
Hey, Chris, could you bring that up? I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you,
Can you
Dave.
bring it back up, please?
Chris, and so the board can see that.
Is this in compliance then with our, I think that's in compliance with our sidewalk ordinance, isn't it?
Right, I think that would be in compliance, but then if I go further, my feeling is that paved sidewalk isn't necessarily needed on the loop road portion of the development, just because it's served, it's relatively small vehicular traffic, and pedestrians can, walk on the shoulder of the road like they do through most of the Lansing Trails development. I'm just asking what your impression of that idea is. We would have the walking trail that's noted in this drawing that kind of goes through the middle of the loop. And, that wouldn't necessarily, we aren't thinking that would be deeded to the village, but I also don't think there's any reason why people, any random citizen couldn't walk down that path. I mean, wouldn't be gated or anything. What are your all's feelings on that idea?
Oh, you mean having a sidewalk go around the loop?
Not having a sidewalk go
Well,
around.
right. Well, I will say that every time I go through Lansing Trails, I wish that there were a sidewalk when I see some of these people around the thing, but it's a much more of a thoroughfare than this is, for sure. So that's a hard question for me. The fact that you have a trail going right through the center is good, because then you would, like, let's say it would be this time of year, how does that work? Would you be maintaining that so that people could walk it even in bad weather?
I believe the HOA would maintain it. I mean, the idea of the whole development is that it be pedestrian friendly.
Right.
And so, yes, I think that would be maintained for walking year round.
What would it do? This is a general question, isn't directed necessarily towards anyone, but what would it do if there is no sidewalk around the loop or Millcroft extension south, and there is a sidewalk when the kind of future development, whatever version of Lansing Trails it is, I'll go with 3, is designed, if they have a sidewalk that terminates there, would it make sense to do that, or would it make sense to have something go around the loop, or would it make sense just to have something go straight up Millcroft extension to connect with whatever's on that kind of west loop you were talking about all the way up to Millcroft Way, as opposed to going around the loop?
So just on the straight thing, go up and connect straight to Millcroft so that ultimately when Lansing Trails connects, that does make more
There's
sense.
something there. I don't think I'm necessarily against not having something on the loop road for the reasons that were pointed out that you know, especially with that path in the middle there. I'm just
Right.
thinking about the future. I would imagine that we would have that discussion with you know, the development of that other phase about having a sidewalk. If it stops there, then we kind of run into an issue. Or it doesn't make it as walkable as, you know, as we've been discussing for years in the village.
It is a logical place for it though to be.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree about, I think the trail going straight through there, if I were to be in one of those homes, I would choose that as opposed to the street, I think most of the time.
It's very similar to Lansing Trails 1, and I mean, it really is. There, you know, there's kind of a big oval with a path through the middle. I used to walk on the path in the middle all the time, and I kind of stayed off the road.
Anybody else from the board have a thought on this?
Yeah, I'm okay with not having a sidewalk around the loop. I can say that for a long time, I've walked extensively in the Highgate Circle area on that road, and there's no sidewalk and there's very little traffic. So in terms of pedestrian safety, I don't have a problem with it.
Anybody else? But I do think, Mike Baker, your point about the connection for Millcraft, whether it's put in immediately or goes in as part of the escrow situation, I think that is something that should be planned for, from my opinion, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I was just thinking that we can provision a space for that sidewalk at some
Right.
point to eventually be put in. I don't think it's necessary right now. But who knows what's going to happen to the south of there, right? So I think we should at least be planning ahead, not necessarily constructing it, but making sure that there was the ability to construct it when we need it.
Does that make sense, David Beer, to you? Does that
Yeah,
give you a clear direction?
So can I summarize what I think I heard, that
Please.
you all
Yeah.
are fine with the
I have
idea?
a question.
Oh, Tony, so I'm sorry. Let me stop you, David Beer. Tony?
Sorry, David. So just a point of clarification. So my memory serves me correctly, we recently approved a sidewalk ordinance.
Yes.
Are there any elements of that sidewalk ordinance that are relevant to this discussion?
Well, that's what I said. Is this in compliance?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, in
Yeah, you
compliance.
can, to answer your question, this whole project is basically the planning board can allow or not allow a sidewalk put in, or the planning board can require an escrow be put up for a future sidewalk put in. It's basically, Tony, it's basically up to the planning board how they want to handle this. If you don't want a sidewalk on the loop road, you can relieve David from having to put a sidewalk on a loop road. If you don't want to put one on Millcroft, or you want to not put one going down to the Lansing Trails 3 development, you can have an escrow in case you ever need one for that.
Right.
At the local law, I mean, it's mandatory unless we waive it, basically. So like he would have to have a sidewalk everywhere unless we feel like it's not necessary. And then we can waive that.
But I think what's important, if we waive it, is that we don't build to it something that then won't allow it to happen in the future, I think is what we're saying. So like Monica said, we need to plan for it, even if we don't require it to be built right now. And as to
So
whether
by
we
plan
want it,
for it, we mean that when Chris does the final plat design, there's some dotted lines that say future sidewalk? Is that what we mean?
I
Or are
guess,
we gonna, because if we don't do that, then this gets forgotten.
right, no, that's how I would want it to be. Mike Scott, I don't know enough about plans in that regard, but yes, I think that's the way it would be. Is that correct?
You could put that in there. If that's going to be a condition, then you can put that in there. I'm sure Chris Wood would be able to identify it in some version, whether a dotted dash, whatever you want to do. I'm sure that's possible.
Okay.
And on,
Anybody else?
on top of that, Lisa, we can also put it in the resolution.
I was gonna say, I just made a note like a condition in the res, right?
Good.
Okay, so David Beer, would you, yeah, you now have the floor to recap what you think we all just said.
All right, so if I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll go ahead and draw in the sidewalk along the West Road from Craft Road to the end of the existing Millcroft Way. And we'll run a leg down the new Millcroft Way extension as shown in this drawing to where that trail is going to go up the middle of the loop road. And we'll set aside space or make sure there is space to continue down Millcroft Way extension to Lansing Trails. But we're not going to do anything with the loop road proper, and we aren't going to draw in provision for a future sidewalk on the loop road proper. It's just the Millcroft Way extension where there would be provisions for a future sidewalk in that area from the trail in the middle of the loop road down to the Lansing Trails boundary. Am I understanding you all correctly?
That's how I understand it. Is I guess the only other question then is which side of the road do you have to worry about? Which side of the road? Oh, okay. So the trail is on the east side. So the
I
sidewalk.
would keep it on the same side as where they have
Yeah,
the proposed sidewalk
right.
coming down. Yeah,
So
I mean,
it has to go down that side.
So can you see that Chris just drew in a red line there?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
I do.
So that would be the space allotted for a potential future sidewalk.
That's what I would like to see, yes. If anybody has, Tony, does that work for you as well?
Well, given what Mike just said, that we have the power to do or not do within the sidewalk ordinance, I guess I'm not understanding why we couldn't do the same thing around the loop road. What's the downside of doing that?
Oh, I see. You mean planning for it in case?
Yeah, planning for, what's the downside? We're not taking property away from homeowners or homeowners association, are we? We're just designating
Possible
in
future.
the right of way that there would be a possibility of a future sidewalk. What's the downside?
Is
Can
there
I just ask Chris to confirm that the way things are drawn now, that, there kind of is space within the right of way for a sidewalk?
Yes, David, there is room for a sidewalk on the loop road, just like it conveys along the west road. It would be the same thing, right at the edge of the right of way line is where it would fall.
Well, I think that's a good point then, Tony.
Well, if it doesn't change the size of the lots and stuff, then I don't have any objection.
It would
Okay.
sort of run along this outer
Yeah.
perimeter, or we could do it along the inside. It wouldn't make a difference, which is preferred.
I'd have to ask John Courtney, but I think he has suggested before on the inside, because if there is a car that gets out of control, it'll end up going to the outer loop.
Right.
Okay.
I remember those same comments from John.
Yeah, I think so. Now, at this point, well, not so much at this point, at some point, the planning board is going to have to figure whether that Millcroft extension, the red line that Chris put up there, if you're going to require an escrow for it.
Right.
The same way with the loop, are you just going to make sure that there's space there for it, or are you going to require an escrow? That's what the planning board has to decide.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so that's something you've got to decide. So that's the sidewalks as far as I'm concerned. Can we think about or talk about trails? you know, we have a bunch of trails represented on the drawing. Do these seem to be adequate in what you all are thinking? The only thought that I had was whether you want to see a connection to the trail on near the hand now on that northern stormwater facility.
Oh,
Right now that, you know, that there's kind of a grassy, I wouldn't even call it a path. It's just I think the village probably mows the berm that holds up the Millcroft Way storm pond. But there's not really a trail there. But I think that was part of the Greenway plan. Do you all, you know, see utility in making a connection to that area? Or can we move forward with what's been drawn and presented to you right now?
I guess maybe, I hate to say this, but maybe we should see whether they have strong feelings. One of the things I'm not clear because I'm not sure, I have trouble orienting to the Hickey Park, but do these trails connect? I know that was a concern that we connect to the Hickey Park, which I do know there are some plans to sort of start developing something there. So do these trails connect to that? I think that's more of a concern, but I don't know. I think we have to check quickly with the Greenway Committee as to whether they have strong feelings about this, but it seems that with some of the other sidewalk and trails that we have going, that maybe, I don't know how used that is. Of course, it just goes to nowhere.
So I'm on the Greenway Committee, so
Oh,
I'm not
that's
gonna
right.
speak, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but our first preference always is to connect the trails. And that's
Right.
written in our Greenway plan. So as much as possible, we want all the trails, and eventually we have some like global scale plans to connect everything up. So if it's possible to do, the Greenway Committee always votes yes for that. And then maybe this trail will be used more because the residents from the new development will be able to come up and use this. And then so maybe, because the other part is to kind of maintain the trails that we currently have as well. So if people use the upper trail more too, there's more incentive for us to, you know, either pave it or do something to make it more accessible to people as well. So I think as I'm speaking for me, but I'm pretty sure the Greenway Committee would vote yes.
Okay. That's probably a fair assessment. So Mike, could you scroll up a little to see how where this would go ultimately, if it connects with something? So the thing that's on here now, that's drawn on there exists already, is that correct?
That trail.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so that trail is there, and you're saying, how would we connect that to your trail? It would have to come down across the wetlands and then go down to there somehow,
Right.
right?
And as you get to that very kind of northwest corner, you know, that's where the stream that goes between on the north side of lot 7, 8, 9, 10. That's where that
Because this
stream
this
comes
stream
through.
continues on right.
Well, not just there, Chris, but at the very northeast corner of the property, that the stream that goes, the larger stream that goes.
This one here.
Right, that larger stream that goes behind lots 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, that stream's a little more quite a bit more substantial, and some type of crossing is going to have to be
I was just gonna say, yeah,
fabricated. I mean, whether it's I don't know what it would be, a bridge, a big culvert, but that's a big, low, wet area there.
We can talk to John, because I mean, he
Yeah.
did this thing to get over to Harts Hill Park, and he did this culvert with rocks. And it's worked quite well over there, because that's a really swampy area as well, behind Dart, between Dart and Northwood. So, but yeah, I mean, if it's feasible at all, like, let's try to do it and we can work together, I think, on that as a village and with the developer. Because I think that would be important. And so as we go down to the south, can we just show where Hickey Park is? I just want to see.
Yeah, I was
move
gonna say, I
the
don't know
map
if there's
up.
a connector there. Okay, so basically on this one, we need to have John Courtney's input on this.
I think so, because he would know more than anybody how we could do that.
Because we have some bridges and stuff. I've walked some of the other stuff over, like when you go off of Graham Road, cutting through to Hart Hill Park. Okay, so where is Hickey Park? This is that right there by the biotech? Yeah, that's what I thought. So the opportunity again to connect with the trail would be in a swampy area.
That area, kind of on the west side of Hickey Park is, it's not that swampy. It's,
Okay,
it's maybe damp, but it's not terrible. It's not like a stream running through there at all.
so I just think we want to have plans to connect to there, because I know the Greenway Committee is talking about, starting to look at Hickey Park.
Could we
the
move
west
that
side.
little extension trail that's going onto Craft Road? Can we just move it, what is that, east? So that it goes
So-
to
Yes.
Hickey Park
So
instead?
that little extension that you see right there perfectly matches up with the trail system that runs
Right.
behind Craft. So
And
yeah,
that was the reason for that
Yeah.
placement of that little extension there to Craft Road was because of the extension across.
yeah.
So then people would be able to get to it, because that trail, doesn't it run up to Hickey? Could you go
No,
that way?
No, it doesn't.
no.
This was one of the things that John Courtney brought up actually in one of the past meetings, was a connection to the Hickey Park. That's why I had it in my notes. I think it doesn't, so again, there would be just, a trail
mean,
off, just
I'm
connect.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it makes more sense to, like, I would be in favor of keeping the one on Craft there. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
if you take that one, I'm just curious if we think to the future about, when the next phase of Lansing Trails happen, if there's a better opportunity to have some connecting trail into the park from there or down. As opposed to having, like, there's the entry right there where, Craft and Janivar meet. Then there's a little one right where it meets Craft on the trail system. Then we're talking about putting another little one here that goes to the park. I'm just wondering if that's a bit much for maintenance and everything, and if it makes more sense to think forward to the next phase
Well,
of Lansing
actually,
Trails.
and it might make more sense to wait too until the development of Lansing Trails 3 is finally completed, where there would be a connection there. And then
Yeah.
at that point, maybe the village could take a look at whether they want to connect into those two. But as it is now, this does connect to the other trails that exist already.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be weird if we did another extension into Hickey Park. It just would feel weird. I mean, and then I was just thinking, like, if you have like a young family with a stroller or something, if they're coming down through this neighborhood, they can go on the side of Craft Road. It's just a short distance and it's not that trafficy. I think it'd be okay.
Yeah.
Are y'all sure about that? I mean, to me, it looks like, a 20-foot leg of trail that would get you into the park. It's like rather short distance. But
Yeah, it is only 20 feet. It's just odd that it's like there's these little connections everywhere. And I'm just curious in the future if it would look.
Well, I think it would. I sort of think it makes sense. If you're going to do it, you do it. It's never
Yeah.
easier to do it later. And I do know there are plans to go forward with doing something at the park, and it would enable somebody to, instead of going out onto the road, just go right into the. I guess I'm with David here. Thank you, David. Put it in. Plan for it.
Yeah, and then, this is a question that I ought to know the answer to, but who's responsible for maintaining the trail?
Well, that's a good question. I think that, well, the ones I know in Lansing Trails are, I believe the village maintains them, don't they, Mike Scott?
It all depends. Lansing Trails 1 well, let's put it this way, Lansing Trails 2, where you see all of the townhouses, those are controlled and cleaned by their HOA. Lansing Trails 1, I would have to check on. I don't believe that the village does it, and it probably, I know that Lansing Trails 2, I know they had an agreement when they set up the cluster subdivision there and who was going to be responsible for them.
I think the village does do Lansing Trails 1.
I don't
You
think
got
they
Roy?
plow that. They don't plow them or anything though. Like when
No.
there's snow or anything, they don't do that. But I think originally the trail system behind Lansing Trail 1 was, it was that crushed stone, kind of like you see in Millcroft. And then years ago it was paved, and I think the village did pave it.
Because Lansing Trails 2, they've had a couple of trees down or whatnot, and I've gotten a hold of Lisa Bonnewell to call the HOA to have it removed, and they've done it.
I mean, again, another silly question is, are the trails deeded to the village, or do they remain the property of the adjacent homeowners or HOA?
I would have to ask John Courtney, but I wouldn't think that they would be deeded to the village. Then you'd
I
have to
don't
have an easement.
I don't think they're deep.
I think they are not. I think they stay with the HOA. I don't know, do we have, where do we have an HOA? Shannon Park? Do they have trails? They don't have trails, I don't think.
So this really seems a little odd to me because, you know, the sidewalks, for instance, are always within the village right of way. And in the village, I think that the village maintains them. I mean, the developer may build them, but the village maintains them. And, you know, with this trail system, part of this greenway thing, you know, this entire global greenway trail network, the maintenance should fall on the private property owner to have to, you know, fund an amenity for the entire village's use. And then if the trail does stay within, you know, deeded to the property owner, then are they then liable for trip and falls and stuff?
Aren't all these trails in like the HOA area? I don't see them falling on private parcels.
Well, HOA or private parcel, HOA is not a municipality. What, you know, it seems odd to me that the HOA then should have to, you know, take on all this responsibility for village infrastructure for benefit of the global citizenry and not just the, you know, immediate property owners.
If the village maintains it, what's the legal route? Like, would we have to do easements for everything then? How difficult would it be?
We'd certainly want an easement.
I don't think you do.
I don't think there are any existing currently I would have to do more research into whether there are any.
Well, I think, you know, this basically kind of falls into planning for everyone for the future, but it's planning for village residents mostly. I mean, yes, as you pointed out earlier, David, anybody could walk these, but it's not like people are going to come and park and take a walk on the trails usually. I mean, there might be people who work at some of the places on Craft Road that might come up and walk it. Yep, that's possible. But it's just one of the things that makes a place a desirable place to live, is all I can say. It's just kind of part of what all of this is about. You know, you want trails because people want to be walking and it's healthy and it's good for us and it's all of those things. And it's, somebody does have to take care of it though.
Well,
And
I'm
you
not,
raised some important points.
right. I'm not anti-trail at all.
I
But-
know you aren't.
But the idea that, you know, someone other than a municipality should have to take on the cost and liability for, you know, random citizenry to, you know, enjoy those trails that just doesn't seem right to me.
Who takes care of the ones at the airport? The tech park one?
I think Cornell does.
They do. So
Why doesn't everybody let me find out more about this? Okay.
I was just gonna say, I think this is really important to know. Yeah,
I will
like, I
find out.
kind of agree with David. I think this is connecting to all of the public trails that we currently have. So I would be more in favor of the village taking it over, but if it requires tons of, like, I just don't know how legally, how much work it would be. So that's the other
well, yeah,
point.
it's important that we figure this out because we have other parcels in our village that are large that have the potential for, will want trails. And so it's important that we understand this and kind of work out how this is going to work with creating the environment we want,
David,
as well as what our developer wants.
David, would you allow Natalie and I to work on this? And you satisfied with us coming up with something and possibly the next meeting or the meeting after that, I have some information for you.
Well, yeah, sure, of course. I just think that, these are issues that should be known or,
I
should
think
be
you're right.
understood.
Right. But in the meantime, I would put that 20-foot length in there to the Hickey Park, if you don't mind. Okay, so you said you wanted to know about sidewalks, trail connections. Wasn't there a third thing?
Yeah, connection to the Lansing trails. We've all been talking about how the Millcroft Way extension is supposed to connect to an approved design where roadways come down, kind of in front of the approved townhouse lots of Lansing Trails 2. And,
Right.
the road kind of goes east-west and then it turns to the north and makes a connection to Millcroft Way. I just wanted to have a discussion about the necessity for that connection there and offer my opinion that that the Lansing Trails 2 should be a development, something unto itself, and there should be a connection between that road in front of their townhouses and Ayla Way or Evar's Way, rather than zigzag into the Lansing Village Cottages development. I think in terms of traffic calming, avoiding, people taking weirdo shortcuts through very residential neighborhoods, it would be, beneficial for everyone if the Lansing Village Cottage people couldn't cut through the Lansing Trails and vice versa. And I just wanted to throw that out there and hear your opinions.
So you're saying basically you want a dead end right there?
Yes, at the, have the Millcroft Way extension end at the south end of the loop road.
See, at this point, it's already been accepted as Lansing Trails 2 as a site plan that's already been approved. So the approval was to connect at this point because of past agreements with the Millcroft Phase 1 and Phase 2. So to completely say that we cut it off in where the loop road is, it's not possible at this time. I mean, we would have to go back and renegotiate with Lansing Trails 3. It's just not feasible.
Okay, well, they're a long way from construction. And does anyone know, what their motivation was for proposing a connection to Millcroft Way? Was it just economy, or were there some other reasons for doing that?
I think it basically had simply to do with connecting the village, like Bush Lane in general with another way of going besides Warren and Trip Hammer, if they so chose.
Well,
I don't,
Lisa, I
but
can,
I don't think any of us do. It was a long, but I mean, it's something, again, I'm sure it's somewhere, somebody does know.
I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, Lisa, but I can look up through the minutes or whatnot, but at this point, Dave, there's no disrespect, but it is what it is at this point, and I don't see how it can possibly, we can change something on someone else's property to suit this cluster subdivision. So, like I said, no disrespect with that, but that's kind of how I feel with it.
I understand that, I can't propose something that, conflicts with what's been approved next door. But I still think that, since, nothing's been constructed in that vicinity, revisiting the design in that area is worthwhile. Again, I don't know, why it was proposed. I'd be curious to know why it was proposed to have a connection there as opposed to Ayla Way or Ivar's Way. But, I was just hoping to get an impression of your opinions on that. I suppose at this point, in terms of construction, the Millcroft Way extension would be approved, more or less as drawn. But, I assume also that that last couple 100 feet wouldn't have to be constructed until there's something to connect to, so.
You're saying not connected and have some type of escrow there if it ever had to be connected.
Sure, I mean, what's the point of having 200 feet of road that dead ends at the property line rather than back a little bit?
Let's run that by John Courtney and see if that has any implications to his plowing or whatnot. That'd be one of the things I think we could bring up to John Courtney and then bring back to the planning board.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, I'm just guessing that for John to run his plow down to the end of that road would be a pain in the neck relative to stopping short and turning around right there at the entrance of the South Loop Road. But yeah, let's talk to John about that.
Yeah, and I don't know, well, we can talk about this, Mike. I'm sure that there's some people that in the village that do know some of the rationale for this.
There is and I do not have a hard copy of it that I can actually read, but when Bomax came up, there was a discussion about, I think it was when there were certain people in the village in favor of the Bomax development, certain people not. We had that big meeting where a lot of people came and talked. There are, Mike, if you dig it out, it's on 10/17/16. There should be a big paper packet in there, and there's some kind of mock-ups in there on one of the pages about what their kind of plans were, the Johnsons, for that area. So there's some walking trail area in there. There's some green space area in there. I just can't read the digital version that I have. So, but that might be why they didn't want a road running through there, because they had other plans to do things with some of that property in there.
You're saying because they are under the same rules and regulations of a cluster subdivision, they probably had to have, so much green space or whatnot.
Yeah.
Might have been
Yeah.
the only option.
And that's what it looks here, because their mock-up has a whole bunch of townhouses mocked up on it. And then that area that could potentially connect to like Ivar's Way or whatever, they've got green space and some walking trails and stuff mocked up in there.
All right, thanks, Mike. I'll look into that.
Yeah, they changed something there at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't remember either. But we can find that out, just to be certain that we know what we're doing with that part. Okay, are there any other things that Chris Wood you need, or David Beer you need to know?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine now. I really appreciate, being able to, have this hour-long discussion, so.
What we're here for. We want to see this move along. Okay, so before you go though, I did want to ask you about progress on the Quonset hut while I have you. What's happening there? Because nothing much has happened for a long time. And I know.
There is admittedly little progress on the Quonset hut, through the winter months. I've been suffering, or our operation has been suffering from a labor shortage, which is, kind of industry-wide in the construction business. And it, just hasn't been high priority for us. But we intend to, as the weather breaks, move ahead with the Quonset hut construction.
Well, I was just going to say, I just wanted, this is a great piece of property, but you are between two developments that are people who are very concerned about the aesthetics in their yards and landscaping and whatnot. So just, keep all of that in mind as you're moving forward with these kinds of things too. They're interested in aesthetics as well, as I know you are too. So I just wanted to bring it up because it's been brought up to me, as well as, when we go forward with landscaping, I think we'll have some discussion on that too. So, but okay, so come spring, we hope that the same teenagers in your family that helped you take it apart can put it back together.
I don't know if you know about motivating teenagers these days.
I do.
But whether they're going to be involved or whether higher paid personnel are, I'm not sure at this point.
I'm just giving you a hard time, but okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, other business. So is Simon still with us? We
He's here.
have,
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, we're on one computer now.
oh, okay, oh yeah, well, so everybody has a copy of the Village of Lansing Tree Conservation and Replacement Local Law. It is quite a feat and accomplishment, Simon, I must say. So
Here.
I think that given some of the development that is pending in our village, that it's a really important ordinance for us to take on. Although, tell us where a lot of this language came from and where other places are that have tree ordinances around us.
Yeah, so I did this about a year and a half ago, so it's been a little while, and it's gone through a number of iterations. And Bill Troy helped me out quite a bit with getting to where it is currently before he left. When I originally wrote this, so going back a year and a half, it was tough because most of the tree local laws, the replacement conservation local laws that I could find came from large municipalities, from cities. And so they're very complex. So if this is kind of a long local law, the ones that I brought this from, with 20, 30 pages, very, very long, how to deal with trees during construction, how to protect trees, looking at root systems. There's very few small municipalities that have done this. So I just pared back from pretty much from looking at cities. We're looking at 30, 40,000 plus people at the minimum. But trying to find this, tree replacement local laws from villages pretty much didn't exist. So I just pared it back as much as I could. And Bill made me pare it back even further.
Are there any municipalities of any size near our village that have such an ordinance?
I should probably look back at that because, as I said, I did this 1.5 years ago and there was nothing. Most of this one was pulled from a municipality that I found down in Tennessee that was on the smaller side, 20, 30,000 people. But again, it was still a very in-depth local law that I pared back further. So I never saw anything of this sort of size where we're looking at just 3 or 4 pages.
So no, in the city of Ithaca or town, there's nothing either?
The city was working on one. I don't know, they were working on it at that stage. I don't know where they are right now. I don't know what they have at this point. As I said, I should probably go and look back to see if anyone else has adopted something similar. I remember after I did this, I ran this by an arborist just to make sure what I'd put in there technically arborists were capable of doing, and he said it was pretty straightforward sort of stuff. Like in terms of measuring, the diameter breast height and doing a survey. He said there's certain types of arborists that do that. Consulting arborists would come out and do that, but any certified arborist was capable of doing it.
Okay.
So I wanted to double check that it was actually doable for an arborist.
Okay. Because I am totally a tree hugger type.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, there's certain things in there that I'm just guessing with. So like costs, how much does it cost to replace a tree? If people pay into a tree bank, from memory, I think I had $250 in there. I'm just taking a stab in the dark. So I was hoping for people to give me some input on that because I don't really know if that covers the cost of replacing a tree. I know in our budget, in the village budget, we budget around $400 for a tree. So $250 probably isn't going to cut it. But I didn't want to say it's $400 per tree and then you have a 1 acre development that ends up owing, $15,000 in tree replacement costs. So I was just trying to find something that's fair. But some of those costs I didn't know about. Trees on an undesirable species list, I'm still looking for input from people there. And that's going to differ from area to area. And as I said, I pulled a lot of this out of a municipality in Tennessee where their undesirable tree species aren't going to match ours.
Right. Well, I guess, because I think so many of us people were just totally shocked by the property on Dart Drive, Graham, right at that curve when all of those trees got chopped down. It was just so shocking and striking that I think it brought to light that we really need to have something. As I said, I'm a bit of a tree hugger, but I do know there will be resistance of people who say, you can't tell me what to do on my property. And so do you see, well, I'm trying to remember. I looked at this, I started to go through with it, and I thought, well, I got to wait till I hear the discussion. But this would apply to both commercial and residential, correct? Or do you think we need to divide this up?
This is something that I had worked on with Bill, and because originally I had it written in there that it pretty much works for any tax parcel within the village. So if Monica and I were here and I think I had it written down as if you're taking out 2 or more trees in a calendar year, then you become subject to this. Or you have to pay a fee. So, if Monica and I would cut down a couple of trees in our house, then we'd have to pay, the $250 to replace a tree. Bill asked me to take all of that out because he thought that was overreaching and people would be upset about that, and suggested that I just leave it to development of a lot, whether that's commercial or residential development. But anything that requires a development permit, or if you're on So at the bottom of Dart Drive, if you have a completely empty lot, and you're planning on building a house there and you just clear cut it, then you're subject to this. But for a homeowner just cutting down a couple of trees in their backyard, they're not affected at all.
Right. Now, I happen to be in Maine at the moment and we're on the coast and, you know, there are certain places where you can't, you know, cut trees down because of erosion and view shed and all of that. So it's not unheard of that we can set an ordinance for people in their yard. But I guess our properties are somewhat different, but we have some plots that will be coming up to us where there's a lot of trees and I would hate to see them just clear cut just for the sake of putting something there. So, so Bill already helped you with that, good, because I think he has a good sense of overreaching. And I think that if everybody here could really, with that in mind, sort of be thinking of how we protect, but how we make it something that's reasonable. In terms of enforcement, it says it will be at the discretion of our code enforcement officer.
Well, I guess the way that it's also been changed with how Bill helped me out with it is that this is enforced during development. So I think the planning board would have a large role in this and making sure that, you know, say for the Nissan building, when that went in and they cut everything out, just making sure that they come back with their, you know, 100 diameter inches of you know, tree diameter. And if they don't put in that 100 per acre, then they pay the money so that the village can plant those trees elsewhere.
Well, I think the concept too of the tree bank came up with the whole McGuire development, where, you know, there really wasn't a place where they could do trees, do their proper landscaping per se, and they wanted to get rid of some stuff. And it's like, I really think that was a great idea. He even mentioned it. So I think it'd be good to do.
Some municipalities have, their tree bank isn't really a monetary fund. It's more of the municipality has designated an area where you can go and plant trees. So in lieu of planting the tree on your own lot, you go and plant these trees in the neighborhood park. I didn't really want that because I'd rather that be at the village's discretion. So they pay money to the village and the village plants the tree wherever they want to plant it. They maintain it. So there's no, you know, it's not a cloudy situation. They just pay the money, then the village takes that over. But then I'd also put in there that money could also go to fund climate initiatives, because I was always concerned that the village, I don't think we're going to run out of spaces to plant trees, but maybe we do. You know, I can't say that we, you know, we won't run out. So I'd like to have sort of a release valve there that then that money could be shuttled into something else that's, you know, funding climate change initiatives, that's heading us in the right direction, where, you know, in lieu of planting a tree, if we don't have a space for a tree.
I just wanted to be sure that we do plant trees though as much as possible first. That's the one thing.
Yeah, I think, that's always going to be the number one. And then, but if we can't.
Uh-oh. Did anybody else get a message from Zoom to ditch the 40-minute limit?
What?
I just got a Zoom message to ditch the 40-minute limit. I don't know.
No.
It doesn't know that I'm on one that isn't limited to 40 minutes. Okay, so I'm interested in seeing if we can possibly get this, work through this, and make a recommendation to the trustees prior to the end of April. So I would like everyone on the board to keep that in mind, because this is a pretty complicated thing and it is long. It reminded me of the telecommunications section of our code but, you know, I think there are just some things that you can't shorten. And so, but if there's a place that is unclear, I would like everybody to, you know, really take a hard look at this. I think it's a really important thing for us going forward. We have the Uptown property coming up. We have, I don't think the Beer property doesn't have a lot of trees that need to be taken down, fortunately. And he has, you know, committed to preserving the ones along the edges up in the north part anyway. And then we still have all of the whole Sundowns, Fisher Farms, whatever you want to call it, over, you know, property still in the future. So I think it's really important that we get this in place. And I would like to do it, Simon, if hopefully charge the board with getting it done before your departure.
Yeah,
So-
I think right now then, just based on what we've talked about, I need to look into the cost of tree replacement. What does it actually cost? So I can work out a better fee structure for the tree bank. And then also just looking at if there's any other municipalities, smaller municipalities that have come on board in the past year or two that have something similar, and look at what they're doing.
And Simon, I did look, and there are some other smaller villages that do have some tree preservation laws that differ a bit from this one. So, I mean, I don't know how far off of this version you want to go, but there should be some more examples for you and everyone else to look at as to how villages have approached this.
Okay, did you have some villages?
Let's see. So the
If you
village
wanna-
of Montebello seems to be very on par size-wise with Lansing. The other,
Montebello?
yes, Montebello.
Okay.
The other list is still at the office, but I can send them around of other places of similar size that have enacted some ordinances like this.
That would be good to know, just because I think it's important for us to be able to feel comfortable with this. The thing that's funny is I had asked Mike Scott, I said, so I looked in our code. Has anybody else taken a look at our current code, what we have for tree preservation? It's 145-27, and I can read it to you. The village requires landowners to preserve, protect, and nurture as many trees as is ecologically sound when engaging in land development and property management, period. There you have it. So I think,
Pretty enforceable.
I think we need something a little clearer and more encompassing than that. But, you know, my feeling is I'm very pleased that we got the lighting commission done. People always say, well, you can't do that. But you know what? It took some time, but we can do this. I feel very strongly we can do this. And the real key to all of it is letting people know up front what is required so that they can plan for it. And then it does happen. It takes some time, but it does happen. So.
Tony has his hand up.
Tony.
Hi. So, first of all, kudos to Simon. A fantastic draft. A lot of effort. I can see that you spent a lot of time on this, and I, for one, intend to put as much effort as I can put into it to follow it through. To thank you for that. Overarching comment. Lisa just said, as long as we make it clear to the public what's required, that's important, but the why it's required is equally important. And whenever we're faced, especially in these times when it is possible that someone could misconstrue a government action, this is a government action, it's a new ordinance that's going to restrict activities and it's going to require activities. And whenever we're in that field, we got to be very careful about what words we use. So the word should be, here's what's required, but here's why it's required and what's the common good. So I can conceive of a situation where when we go to a public meeting, I presume there will have to be public meetings. Yes,
Yes.
Public hearing.
that some members of the public might come forward with something like what you said, Lisa, I don't like anybody tell me what to do on my land. But that's what we do.
Well, no, that's what a code is. yes.
That is what the purpose of having zoning is, says what you can do and can't do in general on your property. And then with respect to all the rules and regulations that we go through in issuing a building permit or a construction permit or an alteration permit, those are all restrictions on what somebody can do on their own property. So in that sense, this isn't any different. But how we construe it and how we present it to the public will be very important. So my opinion is that we should all take a very close read of what Simon has drafted, first step. Comment on it, mark it up so that at our next meeting, we can begin the process of each person presenting their ideas and how this draft can be improved, what can be added, what can be subtracted. I'm all for simplification. Fewest possible words to get the job done. And then I would really like to see what Natalie just pointed out is other possible comparisons so that we have something else to base our opinions on. And then we move forward. I've already marked up in detail what the draft that was sent around, and I can see where things can be simplified. I can see where there are going to be hangups. I can see where anytime we mention specific amounts of money, that's always going to be an issue, especially since money changes. You know, a $200 tree this year could be a $500 tree 20 years from now or 10 years from now. So we got to be careful about using specific quantitative measures of what something would cost for replacement or what a fine would be for a violation. So sensitivity, accommodation, flexibility, openness, but I think positivity. Why is this important in this time? And I think the introduction does a very good job of that. This is not just for climate.
No.
In the sense of climate change, it's for overall livability in the village and keeping the village a very livable place. So all the things that are mentioned as good reasons for doing this are the positive things we should emphasize as we go forward. Enough said. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I think I've got a few good things to go with now. As I said, this has gathered dust for a little while. So I think I have some direction here, and I'm not sensitive to comments. And there's certain things in there, as you're saying, people get sensitive to quantitative, the fee structure, but also, when I was talking about tree density and required tree density, that's another quantitative number. And I'm open to suggestions there because I really kind of took a stab in the dark there with the 100 diameter inches per acre. I mean, not a complete stab in the dark. I'm reading through other local laws and trying to base it off of those, but it still is, I've got to pick a number. And so I picked that number. So I'm open to a lot of suggestions with those numbers that I put in there.
There was one other thing I forgot to say, and you just reminded me, Simon. So when it comes time for us to have public input, you've probably figured out by now I'm a graphical person. I don't know how you have a meeting with just words. You got to have a picture. I mean, look at the meeting we just had where we have to bring up the diagram, the drawing, the plat 4 or 5 times, and then it disappears, and we got to bring it back, and somebody's describing north, south, east, west, and we're trying to visualize where that. So here's a case in point: tree density. What would be a good way of graphically representing to the public what a tree density of a certain number of inches per acre looks like? Perfect example of where you pick an acre and you put a number of trees on it to say, here's what that tree density looks like. I mean, my property is a little over acre and I've got 3,000. My number is 3,000. And I don't think I have a very, very dense forest around my house. So all I'm saying in general is we should be prepared when we present to the public for discussion, ways of having them visualize something which might be very difficult to visualize without a picture or some sort of graphical representation. And I'd be glad to help do that when the time arrives.
Yeah, I think actually, there's some of these, when we were attending the New York Planning Federation in live meetings, there were always presentations with stuff like that, showing good lighting, bad lighting, good tree design, and, parking lots with, islands that, prevented water runoff and heat and everything else. And so the stuff exists. It's a matter of pulling it all together. And hopefully we can meet this deadline, but at least we'll get a good start. But I just would really like very much to try to do this in the next 2 months. So, okay.
Lisa?
Yep. Jim.
I don't know if we're getting too far ahead, but I mean, I've just kind of looked this over, but I have a question or two or three. And, Simon, you said you hadn't really dealt with this for about 1.5 years, so maybe you need to brush up. But I had some questions about streetscape trees. And looking down that, and I mean, I can read it, but what exactly does that envision? And I guess where I'm coming from on that is I've seen developments where somebody other plants a bunch of pine trees, or I call them fake trees because they don't really ecologically fit in the area where I see, along the edge of the property by the road. And you're driving by, you can't see anything except these artificial looking trees. I'm not sure what you're envisioning here. I've also seen like new developments where they're, of course, because they're new, they look like saplings or young trees planted out by the tree lawn or whatever. What exactly are you trying to capture on this? Because I have different mental pictures as I read this.
Yeah, I think Tony kind of touched on that before when he was talking about, trees aren't just for, helping to improve the, climate and carbon dioxide uptake and prevent soil erosion, but there's an aesthetic component to them too, and reducing, glare from, vehicle lights and noise buffers. So what I didn't want is for people to have to replant a certain density of tree and just say, I'm going to go throw them all in the back of the lot here, or cordon off a little section of my property. So they have to be visually appealing, and that's putting them out, on the street and in parking lots. I was just sort of trying to pad out the language so that people didn't put all of their trees in one spot, but made it visually appealing, created those noise buffers, windbreaks. But again, that's all, this is what I'm looking for input into. How else could we reword that language so that the trees are equally spaced, roughly equally spaced throughout a lot?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting the language be rewritten. I'm just trying to understand what is written. And I'm only looking at streetscape trees. The parking lot trees, to me, looks pretty straightforward in what you're trying to capture there. I mean, street trees, even, let's see, 3 feet behind the edge of the sidewalk or planned sidewalk, or 12 feet from the lot line, more or less evenly spaced, like, well, how many would there be? How far would they be spaced? That's the one I was really focusing on, because I'm trying to, understand. I mean, because it seems to be a requirement that such trees be planted somewhere in that 3 to 12 foot distance. Right away.
I think this would, sorry, Lisa, would also come back to the planning board, because ultimately they're going to be responsible for approving the tree planting plan. So it's really just,
yeah, I know.
Guidance for the planning board, how to give consideration to a planting plan.
I think somewhere, there have been things done in the village in the past where we have guidelines, and one of them I know we have somewhere. I just got to track it down when I get back to the. It's either CLT or CHT design guidelines, and there's parking, and we have some of this already, language already. It's just never. It was guidelines as opposed to ordinance. Do you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't a standard. It was simply, I guess, a suggestion. But some of this stuff was put out there all 20 years ago. So I'd like to track down that language again to see how it works. But one of the things that I know with street trees that you're never supposed to use all the same kind, even though they look great. If disease strikes, they all look dead. And so you have nothing. So they, you know, and if you go down, I remember going to the cooperative extension, and I think it's Nina Bassier, I don't know how you pronounce her last name, from Cornell Extension, is quite an expert on all this street tree stuff. And she gave a lecture. And if you go down Meadow Street, well, I guess it's not Meadow Street coming north, you'll notice that a lot of the street trees that are there all along the road, they're not all the same, but they're all pretty healthy. And they use a special soil so that they get enough water and air, but they aren't all the same. And it looks nice because they are healthy and they're all alive and providing shade for people walking, which is, you know, just a huge benefit in the summer. So that's another little plus for, I think, anybody who walks. You walk on a sidewalk in a summer in Ithaca, and it's pretty darn hot, I'll tell you. Its shade is just wonderful. So that's one of a selling point, if you ask me. But so I think all these kinds of things, these are the things we've got to get down on paper and bring up and talk about as soon as possible. And so I don't know, our meeting, we have another meeting, as you know, in about a week. So, excuse me, I just dropped something on my agenda. So is there anything else anybody wants to ask Simon while we have him on? Otherwise, we're all tasked with getting going with this. And as you said, anytime.
You know, recognize that Simon put a lot of work and effort into this, particularly working with Bill. And I was just, you know, I'd seen that and I was trying to, you know, it wasn't totally clear to me what, I can read the words, but what it was aiming at or what was intended. I was trying to get the specifics. But anyway, yeah, obviously we have some time to everybody look this over and come, you know, look at some of the alternatives that Natalie's referenced, and come up with ideas.
Well, some of that I could also change more into guidelines rather than hard rules that you must plant this distance. But as Tony was saying before, it could be a hard sell to the public at times if you're telling them always what to do. And it might be more palatable if it is more guidelines that ultimately the planning board then will, you know, decide upon, as opposed to saying this tree must be 50 feet from this tree and making it really difficult. But
Why don't we just use the same language, like it has to be this way unless waived by the planning board, because that's what the sidewalk law says. That's
The
another
only
way
thing
to report it.
The only thing about guidelines, which we have discovered, probably in the past 5 years, people will definitely, but it's not in the code. How many times have we heard this in the past, whatever years? I've
learned in my 2 years on this board that treating developers is the same thing as treating teenagers. If you don't explicitly say no,
That's
they
right.
hear you say yes.
That's right. Nope, I'm no longer, in fact, I was working with Carolyn before she abandoned us to go to become a trustee on some guidelines. Well, we were taking what were called guidelines and we wanted to make them standards, because when there's wiggle room, people will wiggle. And it's that simple. So I'm not a fan of guidelines. I think you can give examples, but I'm really into standards. And if it's going to be an ordinance, it should tell them exactly what you want. So,
Jim's comment about street side is another example where a picture is worth 1,028 words. So what Jim is asking is, well, if you have a street frontage of N feet, and you're asking to have street side trees planted a more or less the same distance apart, does that mean 2 trees? Does it mean 3 trees? Does it mean 4 trees? So what would that look like for a single family residence? And what would it look like for a new restaurant? What do we want? So there has to be as you said, examples. Here's what it would look like in this situation. Here's what it look here's what it would look like in this situation. Otherwise, we're going to get to public meetings and we're going to have endless questions and we're just going to go around in circles because it'll just be words.
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's also where this is really difficult because, in some ways, doing sidewalks, like this is how a sidewalk has to be built. There is a standard for a sidewalk. Sidewalk needs to be have this base. It needs to be this width, this far from, the road. But for trees, it's really hard, say for the Nissan building, if I said you got to plant trees out front this far apart, there needs to be this many trees. And I'm like, well, hey, I got a sign here and I want people to be able to see my cars. There's no standard. So it's really hard to say, or for a residence. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to any suggestions anybody has. I'm kind of, tapped out on what I could think of to make it clear. So if anyone can help clarify, just give me your comments.
Will do. Jim, you had all your questions answered?
For now, yes.
Okay.
They're
Anybody
all
else?
questions I had for now, and I think they've been answered to the extent they're going to be answered. So,
Okay. All right. Any other business? Mike Scott, any other business? Oh,
Mike did send an email out just a few minutes ago about we were discussing. Governor Hochul did extend the remote meeting
hallelujah.
another month. So there you go.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased. Oh, goody. All
That
right,
was
great.
we were probably just getting to that about
I see
we
you.
could be there or not.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. Thank you for that. Okay,
Thank you.
Tony, you have your hand up.
Yes, another big thank you to Mike Scott. So I stuck my foot in it and asked for information about housing units in the village. And Mike worked his tail off and sent dozens of reports for the last 5 years, was it, Mike, you sent?
I think so. yeah.
And that's most of what I will need. Now it's my turn. I open my mouth, so I do the work now. So I'm gonna go through all those reports and create a spreadsheet of new housing units that were permitted of each type. And
Like,
I'll present
okay.
you with some graphics that say over the last 5 years, here's the number of single family units that were newly permitted. Here's the number of duplexes, triplexes, commercial establishments, businesses, whatever. But then what else I would like to see is an inventory of current housing units. How many of each do we currently have? So if we know how many we
Oh,
currently
total, you
have,
mean.
and we know the rate at which each type is changing, that's crucial information for us to do planning and understanding what we need, what is being asked for, and what is being provided. So my next question, this is going to revert back to me for more work, I'm sure, is there a current inventory of village housing?
The inventory that we have that I can readily get you, Tony, would be for rental units.
Yeah, that's what I
Because
thought.
we have an inspection that we have to do, so we have a list of all the rental units that we have to go and inspect. So we can tell you 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, we can tell you all that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's a start. How would we go about figuring out the
The
total
assessment
number
office should have
of?
that.
I was gonna say,
I'm sorry, Monica.
The Tompkins County Assessment Office should have that information.
yeah, I was gonna say, or Jody has the tax thing. I mean, yeah, that's gotta be from the Tompkins County Housing, must have, or Jody might even know. Single houses or,
So Tony, what are you looking for? Not necessarily the rentals, talking about what?
No, I'm looking for every housing unit whether it be a single family, duplex, triplex, apartment, how many of each do we have in the village currently there, not under construction, not asking for a permit, existing housing inventory?
So basically, you're saying single houses, duplex, triplex, apartment houses, or
Yeah.
apartment units.
And unless we're going to include tents,
Well, we could.
I don't know, what's the total, how many different kinds of housing units are legal in the village? Single, double,
I think
triple,
those, I
apartment?
think those are it.
If you go with single and two family and multifamily, I guess that would be your three categories you could go.
Right.
with. And with a multifamily, you can always put down, you know, how many dwellings there are within that. If it can't be found in assessment, which
I think it
well, I don't know whether they would or not. I mean, and Monica, I'm sure you know, because you probably have researched before. But even if they can't, I'm sure I can probably come up with something with you know, with enough time, I could, you know, what I have here, I could probably get you a count on it.
I think it is on the, you know, that housing report that they put out also tells the vacancies.
Yeah, that's next. That's farther downstream.
I think
I'm
before
looking
Mike
at,
sends,
I'm looking at both what I'm calling the supply side and
Right.
the demand side.
Right,
Supply side is what do we currently have and at what rate is what we have changing? Is that clear? Those are the
Yeah.
two things that I want to work on now. Then later we ask the question, well, what's the demand? How many vacant single-family homes are there in the village? How many vacant apartments are there in the village? How many vacant one-bedroom apartments? How many vacant two-bedroom apartments? How many
right.
townhouses? That's the demand side. And I think for that's going to be very hard to find.
That is demanding, yes.
I'm assuming you probably use this information for future, wanting to know whether to approve future developments. Okay.
Exactly.
Hey,
Right.
we've got too much of
Exactly.
this. Why do we want to do this? We've got too much of this already. So
Yeah, exactly.
give me a chance to work on it, Tony. I probably won't be able to work on it until, I probably won't be able to have you something until next week because there's quite a few things going on right now, but I will get on it.
Whenever. I know it's a lot of work, Mike. Whenever you get to it, you get to it.
Okay, Tony, I'll work on it.
And thank you for what you've done so far. I'll start working on the stuff you gave me and put that spreadsheet together and report back.
Oh, believe me, when I hit send, I was laughing the whole time.
so, I mean, the assessment office, I think if you do a FOIL request to the Tompkins County Assessment Office, when you look up records for a property, it tells you how many units are in each building. So you could search by the village. You can even search, they have an online database. I don't know if you can export the information, but I think they should be able to if you do the FOIL request. So I don't think it would be too difficult to find the inventory. Vacancies are a whole different story. Like, I don't think anyone ever has a really, you know, on point idea of that because it's a moving target. But at least the inventory.
Pat, what did you just send us?
Yeah, what did you just,
That, a friend of mine his background is operations research, but he does demographics for all of New York State. He's like one of the main experts in the state. And I think he can get us this kind of information. I can check with Jan to see if this is what he does, but I'm pretty sure we did a big project at a church like 15 years ago, and he supplied us with all kinds of demographics as to how many houses, you know, how many units are around, you know, what, because we were trying to, you know, bring in people to the church. So this is the kind of thing he does. So I can check with him to see what he's capable of doing for us.
oh, great.
Good,
That would
thank
be
you.
terrific.
I mean, he does this, you know, this is what he does. So
Thank you, Pat.
he probably already has the information.
That would be nice. It could save our Mike some time also.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll reach out to him tomorrow and see what he's got.
Great, terrific. Okay, if there's no other business. Oh, I just want to be sure, now that we know that we're all going to be Zooming again next Tuesday, will everybody be coming to the meeting? Yes, 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 good. Okay, trustee report. That was me. So the lighting law, basically, I guess did they pass it? Yes, I guess they did. Well, they had the public hearing for it. The Greenway plan, they discussed the lighting law, they discussed the Greenway plan. Basically, that's where I came up with the Ned Hickey Park and then wanting to connect with the trails, trying to set 12-month goals, support the climate smart communities. They're going to be doing natural resources inventory. And they'll be updating the plan online. However, there were some discussion about some corrections that need to be made. Basically, it's budget time. So the mayor was assigning people to the various aspects of the budget, you know, DPW, code, staff, recreation. And they'll be doing all of that. We already knew that both Simon and Randy Smith will not be running again for office. And so effective March 1st, we are going to need to fill 2 slots for trustee. So needless to say, if anyone knows anyone that might be interested in getting involved with village governance, that would be terrific. I think that the thing that's really hard for me to understand is I think, you know, when you go and you vote in our federal elections, you're 1 vote out of millions. And depending on where you live, it might not even matter half the time. But when you're involved at the local level, it's just a whole different thing. I mean, you really can, I think all of us realize that you can make change. And I just, if you know anybody that might slightly be interested, just let Mayor Hardaway know or someone know. Other than that, Simon mentioned that the solar farms has what, 12 signups. That I don't know if everybody's aware of the solar farms possibility for, you know, it's part of the, you can piggyback with your NYSEG account. And then what was brought up is I had brought up and Carolyn had brought up basically working on a walkway plan for the next 20 years to, now that we have a sidewalk plan, connecting sidewalks throughout the village, as just as the Greenway plan would like to have the trails. Let's start connecting sidewalks, and why don't we have we discussed the possibility of having kind of every year, you know, work at a mile of sidewalk or whatever, 50 feet, whatever it turns out to be. But I believe that they're going to be starting work in the spring and summer on Dart Drive finally. And then there was also some brief discussion about the intersection of Cayuga Heights Road and East Shore Drive that's so dangerous. But there was no real resolution there, but that's something that's hanging out there. But it was mostly budget stuff that they'll be focusing on for the next month and through, you know, till May 1st. So other than that, it was not terribly exciting, but it was a good length. It was a fairly lengthy meeting, actually. They discussed a lot. So does anybody have anything else? Because if not, the hour has arrived. It's only 8:51, but I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Monica? Jim? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Next Tuesday. Happy Valentine's